My favorite and possibly the most important vocal and mixing production tip ever. Next on Music Surgery with me, Dr. Bob. Hey you guys, quickly before we get started, please hit the subscribe button and ring the bell. And don't forget to check out the Doctor's Lounge, my store, and the links to some great samples below in the description of this video. Why is my vocal not sitting in this track the way I want it to? The vocal sounds good and the track sounds good, but they just don't want to gel. I've been through this a million times, and I think I've cracked the code. Watch this.
All right, you guys, let me play you this track. There's a very common problem that I come across all the time, and I've really kind of figured out how to solve it, but this problem, start again. All right, you guys, good one this week. Let me play you this track. It has a problem that I come across all the time. I used to not be able to quite put my finger on it, but I've come across a process to really help things out, especially with vocals. So let me play you this, and we'll talk about it. All right, so let me mute the vocals. I have a pretty good sounding track here. Let me play this. Sounds big, spacious, Pink Floyd-ish, whatever. Now, let me play the vocal. I have a good sounding vocal. Here we go.
Don't you let me down again. Some doors are better left closed. Don't you let me down again. Carry the pain wherever I go.
Okay, very expansive, dreamy. My problem here is I don't feel like the track and the vocal are gluing like this. They're two different things going on. So let me play it again. And now that you've heard them both by themselves, sorry, I'm unmuting here. Listen, it's something about them is not gluing. Just not settling. So let me look at my master bus compression. Maybe I can glue things a little harder this way. Okay, I lightened up on it a little bit, and I mean, it's a little more glue. But now I realize that I've got to go to my tracks and find out there's a musical problem. There's a tonality problem. It's not in the compression. It's not in the master bus stuff. It's not in the sound of the vocals. It's not in the sound of everything else. But my vocal just doesn't seem like it's couching in the track. So normally what I would do is I would start with electric guitars. So let's find those. Here's one. And here's one. Not many, this isn't a big, dense rock track, so not likely that this is the problem, but usually guitar can be in that vocal range. And let's take this out and see if it gels, if that's the problem. Okay, definitely not that. Let me try this like lead synth thing here, this thing. great part, but maybe it's messing me up.
Don't you let me down again. Some doors are better left closed. Don't you let me down again.
All right. I mean, I could probably turn that down a little. Let me automate that down a little, but something is still not gluing. It's not. Here we are.
Don't you let me down again. Some doors are better left closed.
Okay, so the next thing I always check is the snare drum, because the snare drum is usually, like I've said before, hitting 2 times a measure, and that can definitely cloud a picture and definitely get in with the vocal and making things just unsettled. Nothing sounds bad here. It's just unsettled. So let's find our snare. Here's our snare.
Don't you let me down again. Some doors are better left closed. Don't you let me down again. Carry the pain wherever I go.
So let me try to bring it down and put a little of that verb on it.
Don't you let me down again. Some doors are better left closed. Don't you let me down again. Carry the
Better. But it just doesn't sound warm and inviting, like a spacious 70s kind of vibe. So those are the culprits that I would definitely look at. So my feeling is that I picked the wrong snare. This has got a real brightness and a real something down low, really thuddy going on. Let's try a different snare. Let's try one with some ring.
Don't you let me down again. Some doors are better left closed.
Still too bright, and the ring is in the way. Ooh, there's an interesting one. Let's try a low thuddy.
Don't you let me down again. Some doors are better left closed. Don't you let me down again. Carry the pain wherever I go.
Interesting, but you can tell now that I'm on to the right thing to try to find out what works with the vocal. Now, let's cut to the future. I've actually solved this problem. I wanted to show you the process I went through to solve the problem. So now I have a snare up here, which on its own sounds kind of neutered and not all that exciting. It's Easy Drummer, and it's, a 14-inch Tama Art Star by the, of all things, country set. So now I'm muting the snare that I had, that we were trying different snares. And now let me play this snare that I picked and listen to how it with the vocal sounds great.
Don't you let me down again. Some doors are better left closed. Don't you let me down again. Carry the pain wherever I go. I wear your words like scars on my skin.
Now, if I played you that snare sample, you'd say, well, I don't want that snare sample. It's just kind of dull and doesn't mean anything to me. But let me play you the vocal and that snare against the vocal.
Don't you let me.
For some reason, the tonality, the tuning of that snare sits right below the vocal but still pokes out. So when you're in a recording session, if you have a drummer there, the first thing you should do, if you go through the song one time, whoops, sorry about that. Always have your phone off when shooting a video. To Mutt Lang, I'll call him back. When recording a drummer, always have the singer singing the song when you're running the song down. And then the first thing you should do in a tracking session is listen to the drums and the vocal, especially the snare and the vocal. Find out how those are sitting, because you're the first day, the first tracking, the first thing you're doing is thinking about the end game. Listen to the sound of the vocal, listen to the sound of the snare, the tuning of the snare, because that's going to be your two loudest things pretty much every measure of the song. So think about your end game right away. If they don't sit well, have the drummer try a different snare, and then have the drummer try different tunings until you go, okay, that snare's always going to poke out, but it's never going to bother the lead vocal, because the lead vocal is always the most important. Likewise, if you're programming or you're triggering a snare from a live snare, audition snares. Audition snares until you find a snare that's really going to fit right with that vocal but still poke out, like this.
Don't you let me down again. Don't you let me down again.
Now let me jump to another part of the song where there's no singing, and let's see if this snare still works. Possibly at that point of the song where there's not singing, I could add this one too. Now that one sounds a little too thuddy for me. Let's find another one. This is a great pack. This is called the Kicks and Snares pack, and it's pretty much just tons of kicks and snares in Easy Drummer. Let's try that one. That one's pretty unassuming. So now I have a couple snares playing when the vocal is not singing. So let me make the transition right here after he's singing. Let me cut out. This is snare 2. I'm going to cut this out while he's singing. And then this is a fill into the instrumental section.
Let me down again.
So another important concept is your snare doesn't have to be the same the whole song. Tailor snares, tailor things in and out of the vocal. Adding snare 2 under the vocal is too much because we want the vocal to be the focus. But here is a musical opportunity to let the drums, the snare be a little thicker. Let me take the snare 2 out. Letting a song evolve is another thing that the great mixers and producers do. They don't just slap limiters and compressors on things and render it and it's done. But back to our point. Find the problem that's causing the problem. It may not be the vocal that's the wrong thing. It might be something around the vocal. In this case, it was the snare. Find the snare that goes with the vocal. If the snare's fine, find an EQ or a balancing in big electric guitars to allow the vocal to come through. But many times, like I said, it may not be the vocal that's the problem. Even if you think it is, it's something around that.
Well, there you go. Many times in mixing and production, the problem is coming from something that's in close proximity to what we think the problem is. With lead vocals, it's usually the electric guitars or the snare that need altered to make your vocal pop. Thanks as always for watching. Give me some comment love and a thumbs up below, and hit me at drbobmusicsurgery@gmail.com if you want to say hello or you want me to work on your music. Take care of yourselves and each other, and I'll see you the next time the doctor's in.